from September to October. The lights will be reported on the 29th of October. And I see Councillor Spears has got his hand up. Can you?
Councillor Spears?
Yeah, regarding Legionella, can we be given
not hearing you, Councillor Spears.
I'm not on mute.
Oh, that's through now. That's come through now. Thank you.
Can you hear now?
I can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Can we have assurances that work is ongoing, not just work on a report regarding Legionella, especially in our schools?
Mr. Benny, could you provide an update, please?
Chair, perhaps it's...
Mr. Kettrick,
perhaps it's
again,
myself.
I think you're still on mute, or just it's perhaps a slight delay in the sound coming through.
It's maybe a delay, Chair. I can, in response to Councillor Spears' inquiry, I can advise that there is ongoing audits and work's been undertaken in relation to Legionella with a particular focus on our schools.
Thank you.
That's good to hear.
Have we any other questions? I'm happy with the rolling action log. We then come to item 5 on our agenda, which is the Internal Audit Annual Assurance Report for 2023-24. This is right, so are you speaking towards us?
Thank you and good morning. So this report is the 23-24 Internal Audit Annual Assurance Report. The purpose is to summarise the work Internal Audit have undertaken over the course of the last year and to provide an overall opinion on the Council's arrangements for risk management, governance and control based on that work. The report also comments on our compliance with public sector internal audit standards. As you can see from section 2, the committee is asked to note that sufficient internal audit work was undertaken to support a balanced assurance and that internal audit can provide a substantial assurance on the Council's arrangements for risk management, governance and control for the year to 31st of March 2024. In addition, I can report that internal audit met or exceeded its key performance indicators and operated in compliance with public sector internal audit standards, with no real or apparent impairment or restriction to scope, independence, objectivity of internal audit activity during the year. Section 5 of the report provides a summary of the overall adequacy of the internal audit work undertaken during 23-24, as well as outcomes relating to the 4 reviews from 22-23, which are included as part of this annual assurance. Paragraph 5.2 provides details of the 4 audits with a summary at Appendix 2. The scope of and the findings arising from each finalised report are found at Appendix 3. Paragraphs 5.3 and 5.4 highlight that the plan set out 23 assignment areas to be completed, but was subject to resourcing issues within internal audit. Although interim arrangements were put in place to manage the workload and appoint permanent staff, there was a continued impact on the delivery of the internal audit programme in 23-24. Of these 23 assignment areas, 15 council audit reports were required. The 15 audit reports do not include those reports issued to the Falkirk Integration Joint Board, Strathcarron Hospice or the Falkirk Pension Fund. Paragraph 5.5 sets out a summary of the status of the 15 audit reports and provides details of 2 additional pieces of work. Paragraph 5.6 confirms the assurance outcomes related to all finalised reports, with a summary of all work completed at Appendix 2 again. The scope and the findings arising from each finalised assignment is also in Appendix 3. Paragraph 5.7 highlights to committee the number and type of assurance opinions provided in the internal audit reviews undertaken to date in 23-24, with comparator data from 22-23 and 21-22. Paragraphs 5.8 and 5.9 explain the overall opinion of the substantial assurance. Paragraphs 5.10, 5.11, you can see internal audit's performance against 3 key performance indicators. Actual performance exceeded target for all 3 indicators, although the percentage of completion of the draft reports within 3 weeks of fieldwork has dropped from last year. Section 6 of the report comments on our compliance with public sector internal audit standards. These set out the principles and practices we must comply with, and every year we're required to undertake a self-assessment against those standards. This review was undertaken by internal audit during March 23. There's also a 5-yearly external assessment which the section last underwent during 2018, and we were found to be compliant. A further external validation is currently underway by Fife Council on behalf of the Scottish Local Authority Chief Internal Auditors Group. The annual self-assessment provides assurance that we operate in line with the standards and there's not been any real or apparent impairment of independence or objectivity relating to audit work. In conclusion, internal audit undertook sufficient work during 23-24 to support a balanced and evidence-based opinion that substantial assurance could be placed on the Council's arrangements. In providing this opinion, internal audit operated in compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. Thank you. Happy to try and answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. And do you have any questions? Councillor Nico John.
Thank you, Convener. Just a couple of questions in relation to the performance indicators. It says that we've completed 90% of the agreed audits. This appears consistently sitting around the 90% mark, and that's in the papers on page 16, with a minor outlier of 95 for 2021. Are there any common factors resulting in the completed agreed audits, for example, the resources within the team, and are we content with the performance indicator that we have, and whether or not we should look to review that going forward?
That's right, would like to respond.
Yeah, of course. The indicator, you'll see that yes, we are around about that area every year. We do strive to be as near to it as we possibly can. It's been a number of years since we've fully completed our plan at the 100% level. So I don't think that, we're at the stage of changing that performance indicator, because there's more that we can do. Yes, you're right in that the issues that we faced with capacity is bound to have an impact on our ability to complete our plan. Last year and the year previous, we definitely had those issues, and we've had issues around filling the positions that we've had. So it's the time taken to, go through advert, trying to find suitable candidates, and then maybe we have to run the adverts multiple times. It all just takes a long time and all that time you're running below your capacity to continue on with all the work. So once you get through all of that and you get the new staff in, you then may have further delays because these people need to bed in. They may require training. They obviously need a bit of support if they're coming into a new organisation. So yes, it does definitely impact. One of the other things that impacts is if we have any changes to our work plan during the year. And this is what happened in our 23-24 year. So we take it as a compliment to be asked to do other work in addition to our plan, but it obviously also impacts on the work that we have ongoing because we are such a small team. So in 23-24, as you all know, we got 2 late additions, which are 2 additional reviews, which are in the paper and you know a wee bit about anyway. And the only other thing probably that I would flag to try and answer your question is we obviously have another plan that we do for Clackmannanshire Council. So if we spend more time on their audits, which is what has happened in 23-24 because of some of their governance concerns, it means then that we don't have that capacity to work on the Falkirk side. So it's a bit of a juggle between the two.
Thank you. Convener, I've got just another question. It's in relation to page 15 and the table that's there. The number of substantial assurances dropped from 80% in the previous 2 years to 33%. Is there any reason for this, and should there be any concern in relation to that?
Yes, I think that's a definite concern for going forward if this seems to be continued through the future years. That table actually is the first time we've produced that table and added it to the report. So I hope that you have found it helpful, and it means now that you will see that tracking going forward, and if that continues to reduce, that is something that certainly I would be flagging with senior managers as an area of concern and what we're going to do about it. It is sitting quite low at the moment. We do have some additional work that's still to be completed that may change things. We also have 2 reviews in there that are a split assurance. So that's where we've not been able to give it an overall assurance, and there are bits that are one and bits that are another. So if you take those other 2 reports into account, it's actually about 50% that we're sitting at. So yes, it's not something we would like to see continued, but we will be able, and you will be able to keep a track of it.
Okay, thank you for that, Isabel. And I think we will want to be kept abreast of that so that things do not run away from us too much before we actually take mitigating action. Yeah, happy to be kept advised. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah?
Right, yes, I think that's coming through now. Thank you, Convener. In relation to page 32, in terms of procurement, it's noticeable that this review has resulted in limited assurance, and it's highlighting that there are a number of areas that require significant improvement. During the period, 11.94 million was spent by BMD on procurement of housing property related services, and that there's been issues of financial management highlighted. Given that the Executive and Scrutiny Committee heard last week about an overspend of 3 million on the housing revenue account budget relating to property maintenance costs, should the committee be concerned over the financial management around the housing property related services, or are there appropriate mitigating actions being taken?
Mr. Benny? No, so we're not hearing you, Mr. Benny. I think you're on mute, or perhaps not close enough to the microphone. Still haven't got you yet. No, we're still not hearing you, Mr. Benny. I think that's you coming through now. We had you there, now we've lost you again.
Convener, Mr. Benny was asking for Douglas to be brought in.
Hi, Convener, sorry, there's obviously some technical issues there. So yeah, just in relation to Councillor Hannah's question, yeah, there are a number of outstanding actions there, councillors, as you've rightly highlighted in the report. I can assure you that following those recommendations, processes have been reviewed, revised, and all actions have been completed. In relation to the overspend that you mentioned at the latter half of your question, as per the meeting last week, we are reviewing our processes. We are looking at that spend to ensure that future overspend just doesn't occur. So BMD are working closely with housing to ensure that going forward there will be no further overspend.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Any further
Thank you.
questions? Councillor Forrest.
Thank you.
Just a slight one. A slight change in it, and perhaps come back to that. It's regarding fleet management and monitoring arrangements. Follow-up recommendations of stage 2. It was noted that all 17 actions had not been fully implemented in the review in 21. And it should have been completed in 22. After the second follow-up, review 4 remained outstanding. In regard to the customer and business support team action, to agree to undertake a further step in the fuel reconciliation process. Why was this an action point? And has this been done, or what was the further step to be taken? And a follow-up to that is, have any other outstanding actions been fully implemented by the service?
Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, happy to come in on that one, convener. So thanks for your question, Councillor Forrest. So all outstanding actions have been actioned. In relation to the first action that you mentioned, the vehicle hire procedure has been amended and details the segregation of duties required for the hire vehicles as per the recommendations. So again, I'm confident that all outstanding actions detailed within page 30 have been actioned, and procedures are being added to the quality management system within fleet services.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gardner. Sorry, Mr. Gardner. Sorry, right. Regarding the purchase cards, page 33, this review resulted in limited assurance, which was a cause for concern. Generally, what is being done to address the issues around purchase cards? Has the rebate amount of 5,256 been recouped, and have the overpayments identified in 15 transactions been recovered, and have the causes been investigated? What was the outcome of the investigation, please?
Ms. Templeman, is this one for you?
Isabel Wright be brought in.
Hi.
Sorry, convener, I'm not sure if you heard
Sarge,
that.
we can't know. We're not picking you up. Could you
Can you hear me
repeat that,
okay?
Mrs. Algie? We didn't pick you up in the room.
Hands on mute still.
Still on mute, I think. Still not hearing you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, so Karen's saying that she was asking for me to come in.
Perfect, thank you.
So I don't have the full detail of what the latest is with purchase cards, but I do know that the recommendations that were made have been implemented. I have no results as to whether these investigations have been completed or not, but we can endeavour to get that back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you could, that would be most helpful, I'm sure.
Any other questions, Mr. Councillor Forrest?
No, I was sorry, I was on mute there, and I wanted to thank for the response. No, I've got no other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a question about the care home residents' monies. This is on page 36. And I've got a bit of experience of this myself, both personally and work-wise. And I'm just really wondering, in a sense, why we're still working on cash bases and purses and money being set aside, when I think that's both leads to much more procedure with issues about opening safes and who's got access, and there must be problems with change being given or whatever, but also for families who live at a distance. I'm just really wondering why, and I experience this in other councils too, that sort of council-run residential homes tend to be working with cash, whereas most private homes is a case of a bank transfer and it's kept as a tally in that way. I'm just wondering if that actually would make things a lot simpler, or maybe some background about that would be helpful, please. Mrs. Algie? No, sorry, still can't hear you. It still looks like you're on mute.
Convener, sorry, we're trying to talk through one system, which is why I may appear on mute. We don't actually have anyone here from the Health and Social Care Partnerships, but we will absolutely take that question back to them, because the care homes, etc., are all sitting within there, but we'll get an answer for you on that particular point.
Thank you, appreciate that, thank you. And if no other questions, I'm happy to accept the report as noted.
Agree.
Thank you. And we now move on to item agenda number 6, which is a corporate fraud annual update report for 2023-24. Mrs. Wright.
Yeah, me again. Thank you. The purpose of the report is to provide an annual update on the work of the corporate fraud team, including an updated corporate fraud action plan. Paragraph 4.2 explains that the last report submitted to the committee was in February 24, and it provided an update on performance and a summary of work undertaken over the period 1st of April to the 31st of December of 23. Section 5 of the report provides a summary of the resourcing issues faced in 2023 and how that impacts on the workload commitments in 24. Appendix 1 provides the committee with the corporate fraud team's activity for the year 23-24. I'd also ask committee to note that the corporate fraud team have met or exceeded target in 2 of the 3 performance indicators. The corporate fraud team have been unable to deliver 3 fraud prevention events per quarter due to the reduced capacity in the team during 23-24. Details can be found at paragraphs 5.4 to 5.6. It is anticipated that performance against this indicator will improve during 24-25. Paragraphs 5.7 and 5.8 set out improvements and progress with the corporate fraud action plan. Progress will continue to be reported twice yearly as part of these updates. Detail can be seen at Appendix 2. I finally draw your attention to the recommendations at paragraph 2.1 and the conclusions at section 8, which are to consider fraud-related performance and the summary of work undertaken within the corporate fraud team during 23-24. To note that the corporate fraud team met or exceeded 2 of 3 performance indicators, and also to note progress with the corporate fraud action plan, which has been updated for 24-25, with a 6-monthly update coming later in 24. Thanks again, happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, Convener. Just a couple of questions, and I'm pleased to hear that we've managed to exceed some performance indicators, but it then does ask the question, at what point do we review those as being current and still relevant if they're exceeding them? But that may not be until we have a sustained period. But it was just around the fact that we have been unable to deliver a number of events due to the capacity of the team. And I'm also aware of the request for information from Police Scotland has risen from 20% to 37%, and whether or not that is going to be a continued ongoing pressure going forward, and is there a need to review what realistically we can deliver, or to whether there's enough resource available within the team.
Is it right? Would you like to respond?
Yeah. So we are at full complement now. I'm happy to report. Similar to the earlier questions with internal audit, it takes quite a bit of time to get people into positions when they're starting off in the council. Also, what exacerbated the situation was that the other member of the team was off on long-term sick. So the corporate fraud team was me in its entirety at one point. So obviously you understand that I was having to prioritise the reactive work that was coming in. So that in terms of then being able to allocate some of that work out to internal audit where we could. And that was where some of the requests that you were speaking about came in as well. So it was a matter of trying to juggle, and unfortunately the performance indicator that I felt was the least of the three that we could probably not meet, if that's the way to put it, was the events, because there was nobody there to do them. We have managed on the other two to undertake them, and we obviously are back at a full team, so we don't envisage that problem happening again this year, because we're now actually doing more than 3 a quarter, and we're a wee bit ahead of the game in that respect. The other PIs, we only introduced them a couple of years ago, so it is still early days to see. But again, we're obviously starting to track them in the report, so it is something that you as a committee will be able to keep an eye on going forward as to how we are performing in that area. I hope that is okay. I'm not sure if I've answered it fully.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Are we happy then to approve the report?
Agreed.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. And we now move on to item number 7 on the agenda, the best value thematic review for 2023-24.
Thank you, Convener.
Mr. Laurie.
Thank you. I'll introduce this report. The purpose of the report is to present the best value thematic review for 23-24. It focused on workforce innovation. And members might recall that these thematic reviews are now undertaken across all councils each year as directed by the Accounts Commission, with a different theme each year, but the theme being the same for all 32 councils. So the first thematic review took place in 22-23. That focused on, as you may recall, leadership, was reported to the Audit Committee in November of last year. And it was also used to inform the programme review in terms of the best value audit for Falkirk, which will be reported to the Council on Wednesday of this week. So in terms of the thematic and workforce innovation, the issues that the auditors considered are set out in paragraph 5.2, and the full thematic review is attached to Appendix 1, and the key messages on page 60 and 61 of your agenda today. I think as officers, our view is that this is, a reasonable and fair and balanced assessment of performance and progress in this important area. I think we were pleased to see that perhaps there weren't fundamental problems in terms of our workforce strategy approach, but the recommendations from review, I think, are helpful in terms of us kind of driving things on to the next stage and picking up in some important areas of development. And what we've done is we've extracted the recommendations from the review, and there's an improvement action plan set out at Appendix 2 to the report. So I think by way of introduction, that's probably as much as I wish to say. I'm not sure if our auditors wish to come in on this themselves, but happy to field any questions. I think colleagues will also be able to support in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrie. Mrs. Gillen, is there anything you'd like to add at this stage?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, just to add to what the Chief Executive said there, this is year 2 of our revised approach to best value, with a different theme being covered each year for all councils. So this year is workforce innovation, and you'll see there a number of key messages that we have. I think recognition of the significant challenges across the sector in terms of finances and the role that workforce planning plays in addressing those challenges. So there's a couple of key things in there. We highlighted that in September 2023, the Council published its workforce strategy and supporting workforce plan, covering the 4-year period up to 2027. Both of these are aligned with the priorities within the Council plan, and both support the key enabler within the Council plan of a valued and sustainable workforce. I won't get into the report in too much detail, but just perhaps a key recommendation to bring out, and we've got a response in the action plan at the back of the report. Key recommendation being that the Council carries out a skills assessment of the current workforce. So that's looking at what skills are currently there and what skills are potentially needed in the future for the Council to be able to drive transformation and efficiency. We noted that some of the individual service plans had mixed levels of details with regard to that. Aligned to that is recognition of the importance of digital technology and skills in that area being key to service transformation and creating efficiencies in use of resources and delivery of services. So we identified that while digital skills and leadership are key strands of the Council's digital strategy and make up the data and digital strands of the target operating model, more could be done just to assess the current level of digital skills that the Council has and where there are gaps and where the skills need to be developed for the future, just recognising that those skills can sometimes be quite difficult to come by across the sector. Another point to bring out is that the Council's embedded flexible and hybrid working across the workforce, aligned with many other employers. 20% are now working in a hybrid way. The Council still has some work to carry out to assess the impact of that fundamental change of working practice, the impact on productivity and staff wellbeing. But we did note that staff in surveys value that flexible approach, which is positive. So there's a number of recommendations in there, 6 noted in the action plan, and we have management responses to each of those actions. We will follow up progress on those actions, and that will be part of the 24-25 audit work. Don't plan to say anything else, but as always, happy to take any questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, Convener. I've got 3 areas that I just wanted to ask about. First one being around the service workforce plans and the overall service plans, to when they're likely to be coming forward and when they will be published and what consultation there will be on those. The other areas are in relation to the digital strategy. I attended the scrutiny committee, and where there was discussion around the digital strategy, but there was no performance indicators in relation to that, and whether or not that is going to come forward to be able to demonstrate the difference that digital is making. And just talking about that final point that Gillian mentioned there about the working practices around the hybrid working, there's been a lot of discussion around a 4-day week and what the implications of that might be for the council, and just wondered what work has been done to date and if that is something that we will be taking further in the near future. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Lawrie, do you wish to come back in?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Karen Algie to speak to these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, thank you, Convener. So there's 3 issues there. So firstly, in relation to the workforce plans, all services will be preparing these for publication by the end of the year. So we currently have service workforce plans, but they will be updated. And as part of that, there will be discussions within services and discussions across teams and services to make sure that these are updated. The council's workforce plan will also be updated at the same time. And as we've got in the action plan, we will look for that to be shared with trade unions and employees to ensure that we've got a wider workforce input to that as well. In relation to the digital strategy, the strategy is currently being reviewed, and we will hold workshops to be able to do some of that work and identify the important areas of new developments for future years for the council. And that we would aim to have that by either summer or just after the summer recess in 2025, coming back to members. And there would be performance indicators in that strategy, and the refreshed version of that strategy. So yes, we would be looking to do that. On the hybrid working week, the 4-day week is one that has been looked at in a variety of ways. We have a very diverse workforce, however, and some of those jobs, if you move to a 4-day working week, have significant cost implications of doing that. What we can do, however, is look at our flexible working practices. So if employees, for example, chose to go into a 4-day working week, that's always an option because we already have some of those options within our flexible working practices. But the actual concept of a 4-day working week would work in some areas of the council, but not necessarily all, without significant cost implications. If we were to do that and only offer to some employees, you then risk getting into a 2-tier workforce. So there are lots of implications and consequences on that, but some work has been done on that already. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nico-John, any further questions? Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. Thanks, Convener, and thanks for that the answer to that last question. My question is regarding recommendation 6. The report highlights that the council does not routinely report on modern apprenticeships or graduate programmes. The agreed management action states that a review of various new techniques to improve recruitment and retention will be undertaken and reported to CMT. Does the Chief Executive believe that the Council's programme for young people entering the workforce has been successful? How can this success be publicly promoted to encourage further applications?
Thank you for your
Is that
question.
you want to come back in on that one?
If I may just come in briefly,
Mr. Lawrie.
Convener, and then I'll pass over to Karen. So I think there has been a lot of success in terms of bringing younger people into the organisation, both in terms of modern apprenticeships, and some of our modern apprentices have done exceptionally well, and in terms of the graduate programme. And certainly I've meet annually with some of these groups just to talk about their experience, how it's been working for the council, how they've benefited from being part of a council team, and what their kind of feedback and reflections on these things are. And that has been a really positive experience. Now, I've no doubt there's more we can do there. And I note, we all note the issue about having a more robust measurement or impact measurement of the success of such programs. And just in relation to that, I'll pass over to Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. There is always more we can do in all of these areas, but I do think, as the Chief Executive has outlined, that we have had huge success in the apprenticeship and the graduate trainee programmes. Indeed, a lot of our graduates, for example, have gone on to secure permanent employment, either with us or with other organisations, but quite a number with us, and that's really positive. I think the thing that can help us assess whether we're doing well in that one or not is there's a variety of mechanisms, but one of them would be our age profile. Our age profile has actually increased in terms of our younger workforce. It's not where we need it to be, but it's certainly improving, and we need to do more in some of these areas. But it's also linked into some of the work we're doing around recruitment on different types of jobs where we know there is a skill shortage out in the market, and absolutely targeting some of those areas to bring in graduates or apprentices in a way that allows us to train our own and retain our own once we've done that training. The training is always costly, but it is absolutely worth the spend if we can then ensure that we have good quality skilled employees as we move forward. So that's where we're trying to get to, but it's looking at each individual job where we have a skill shortage rather than simply a blanket approach of appointing apprentices or graduates. It's making sure we have a very targeted approach in terms of taking that forward and addressing some of the gaps that we have in our workforce.
Thank you for that. Having met some of the young apprentices who've been on my tour-away duties and whatnot, I know firsthand how much they appreciate the hard work that goes in and how they feel. Well, several of them, anecdotally only, I have said that since they're getting such a good training here, they've got no visions of moving away to work for someone else. So that's always a good one if we're retaining the workforce too. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Spears.
Yeah, page 54. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now, thank you.
Page 54, number 4, the council have a statutory duty and at bullet points, work with its partners to identify a clear set of priorities that respond to the needs of the local community. Do you think that we are living up to that promise? And I'll bullet point later where we seem to be failing.
So Laurie, do you want to come in, or Mrs. Aldrin?
Yes, thank you, Convener. I mean, the work with its partners to identify a clear set of priorities is, of course, set out in the Falkirk Plan. And the basis for that is both a very detailed strategic assessment, which looks at data and issues affecting our population. Of course, there was a great deal of consultation involved in that as well, and council has approved the Falkirk Plan. I forget exactly when, I think it was 2021. It's a 10-year plan subject to review on a regular basis. So I suppose, is there more we can do? Of course there is, there always will be. Do we have the basics in place in terms of the community plan, our responsibilities around that? The answer to that is yes, and I think that in terms of meeting, more broadly meeting our responsibilities in relation to best value, it's of course the report that will come to the council on Wednesday, which shows our best value report published on the 2nd of May. It's a broadly positive report, but I guess, Convener, that's one for debate on Wednesday rather than today.
Thank you.
Well, just to say that there's a great deal of concern about our consultation process. As you know, there's great concern regarding the asymmetric week in education at present. But I would say by far the biggest amount of complaints that me as an elected member are receiving is really on roads and potholes and condition. So we will await the outcome of the consultation and the asymmetric week. But I would imagine that as the Scottish Government and Westminster Government have already stated that they don't want it to go ahead. So have we wasted the time with this? If the parents agree, and parents and carers agree, will we then...
These are perhaps bringing in political matters that aren't maybe suitable for the Audit Committee.
No, I think the outcome, if it goes ahead, is very relevant to the public who we represent.
I think perhaps not relevant to the Audit Committee. Thank you. Councillor Hannah?
Just let me get my machine working. I think that, yeah, that should be coming through now. Thank you, convener. Just wanted to have a little discussion about recommendation, a little clarity, but recommendation 2. The agreed management action plan says that it will be made available to the employees to submit views and comments prior to its final submission. But it seems to suggest that plans will only be shared with the workforce quite late on in the stage of the process. As I'm sure a number of people are aware, I regularly comment on the fact that the people who know best what we can do to improve things is the staff that we have on the front line. And I wonder if there's any consideration could be given to consulting with employees on the design of the plan at a much earlier stage.
Laurie?
And Karen is going to come in on this one. Thank you, convener.
Yes, thank you, convener. So the way that we develop the plan, we already have a plan in place. So if there are areas of feedback from employees, we will have taken those areas of feedback on board. We also work very closely with our trade union colleagues in developing that plan. And we found that in terms of consultation with employees and engagement with employees, the best way to engage them is to provide them at least with the draft document to enable them to contribute comments, and we do amend it thereafter, and we have done that with all of our HR policies that have previously came to the executive, for example, for approval. All of those go through a consultation stage with employees, amendments being made to it, and then a sign off of those amendments by trade union colleagues prior to any consideration by members, by committee. So there is that process in place, but if you present employees with a blank sheet of paper, that sometimes is very difficult to get engagement and active participation in a process. Although trade unions are always able to put forward some representatives to work with us in different areas of work. So that does happen on occasion. So for example, there's some work being done just now where we have working groups to develop those actual documents. And that is certainly has been found to be a positive way of working and engaging with employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Sargina. And
sorry,
Councillor Hannah?
Yeah. Could that approach be taken then in this particular instance involving trade unions at that earlier stage?
Convener, so the development of the workforce strategy will follow that similar path. And I think the question that our auditors had for us was the employee engagement on that. Now, in honesty, there was a timeline issue there to make sure that got to committee in time, which meant that full engagement previously wasn't undertaken as it would normally have been. But in refreshing those documents, that will absolutely be done.
Happy to move forward and the action plan here in response to this.
Happy to agree, convener.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. And we now move on to the final item in our agenda, which is item number 8, the annual accounts for 2023-24. Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, convener. I'm going to ask Amanda Templeman to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mrs. Templeman.
Convener. Thank you, Convener, sorry. So the purpose of the report today is to ask committee to consider the unaudited accounts. And we also have Appendix 2 in a report today, which provides updates on external audit recommendations from previous years. So as the committee are aware, the accounts are subject to Local Authority Accounts Regulations 2014, and that's very prescriptive in terms of timeframes that the unaudited accounts should be completed within and considered by Audit Committee. The accounts have to be completed by the 30th of June and passed to the auditor, and the council will meet that deadline. The Audit Committee have to consider the unaudited accounts by the 31st of August, and so this meeting also ensures that the council meets that requirement. There's the requirement to notify the public that the accounts are available for inspection, and that inspection period must last for 3 weeks. So for our case, that inspection period is from the 1st of July to the 19th of July inclusive. The accounts includes a comprehensive review of the 23-24 financial year, and that includes the financial outturns for the general fund revenue and capital and for housing revenue and capital. There's also some performance information contained within the management commentary section, and that's cross-referred to the Falkirk Performance section on the council's website. And there's a statement on our governance structure, which includes internal audit assurance and commentary on risk management arrangements. But in the last month, members have received the unaudited outturn reports for capital and revenue through executive, an updated risk register through executive, the performance report through scrutiny, and the most recent best value report is on council's agenda. In addition, internal audit already presented their assurance report to the committee today. The information in the accounts through the management commentary and the annual governance statement therefore reflects all the information that members have received in the last month. And so all that information should be familiar to members and should be painting a picture that you all recognise. So I won't repeat that information, but obviously we're happy to take any questions on the accounts. I do want to just briefly highlight Appendix 2 to the report, which is on page 195 of the agenda. So during the 22-23 audit, Audit Scotland recommended progress with external audit recommendations should be reported to Audit Committee, and Appendix 2 provides an update on that. There's one outstanding recommendation, which is to conduct a self-assessment against the SIPA Financial Management Code. And due to resource issues, we didn't do that, but we are still planning to do it. And in addition, the council is progressing with the implementation of IFRS 16, which is the new accounting standard for leasing, but that will be reflected in the 24-25 accounts. And finally, I'd just like to thank all of the finance team who have worked so hard to produce these accounts. And also to thank Internal Audit, Risk and Corporate Fraud Manager and the Corporate Risk Coordinator for all the work that's gone into the annual governance statement. I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Templeton. Councillor Nico John.
Thank you, convener. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive if he's satisfied that the management commentary accurately reflects the council and is satisfied that the council's annual governance statement properly reflects the risks and the risk environment that we're operating in and the actions to improve it.
Mr. Lawrie.
Yes, I am satisfied with both of these. The annual governance statement is something which is given very considerable and detailed consideration, is very important in respect of the council. I think in terms of the management commentary, what I like about the commentary this year, precisely as Amanda said, is that link into the Falkirk Performs piece. So we have that kind of connectivity, which I don't think we always had with the management commentary. Could it be further improved? I'm sure it could be. I think it's also, though, important in the context of the accounts that the management commentary should be relatively high level and relatively concise. So what we tried to do in producing that year is maintain that balance between kind of the high level nature of it, but hopefully something which is useful in giving some context to the accounts, and also, as I say, linked into the Falkirk Perform side, which enables those who are interested to explore these issues more to do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrie.
Could I just possibly come back and just ask about the risks associated with the environment that we're operating in at the moment, and to whether or not you feel that is accurately reflected throughout the accounts?
Thank you, Convener. My view would be that it is. I mean, we pay a lot of attention to risk management, as members know. Recently, we've reviewed the way we look at it to try and make the risks more accessible and to make the system less kind of complicated. I think previously it was sometimes more difficult for members to engage with the approach to risk because of the complexity of the approach we were taking. Broadly speaking, I am satisfied with that. We know that there's a significant range of risks which we face. We're obviously acutely conscious of the position vis-à-vis financial sustainability, which lies at the core of all of this, both in relation to accounts and, of course, in relation to issues of best value, which were touched on earlier on. But I'm always interested to hear members' comments or views in the question of risks and whether we've got that right. But I think broadly speaking, we've got I think a reasonably robust approach to that in place. And to answer your question directly, I am content with what we're doing in that regard.
Have we any other questions?
Happy to agree.
Agreed.
Thank you. And that therefore ends our agenda today and ends the Audit Committee meeting. Thank you all for your attendance, and particularly for those that have helped us with our technology issues. I think we've managed. Thank you.